What we need next is a data source that supports querying restaurants using an identifier. So let's go over to the odefu.data project. The first thing I'll do is modify our interface definition because this is what our Razor page uses, the interface. I want to define a method that will return a restaurant. We can call it getById. We pass in an ID parameter. And with that in place, I'm going to copy that and bring it down to our in-memory implementation. What I want is a public method that returns a restaurant called getById. And the implementation can be very simple. Let's go to restaurants. Let's use the link operator, single or default. So either give me the single restaurant that matches the following predicate, or give me a default value for restaurant, which is the null value. But let's look for a restaurant named R. Given R, I want one where r.id equals this incoming ID value. So we either return the single match for this, or we return a null. Back in the detail page, I can now add a constructor. And just like we did with the list page, I can inject iRestaurant data. I need to bring in the namespace, odefu.data. Let's give this the name restaurant data and use control period to place this into a field on the page. And I would now have the ability inside of onGet to say that the restaurant that my page is going to bind to should equal restaurant data, getById, the following restaurant, and I'll pass in the restaurant ID. Let's save this file, come back to the browser. I'm going to refresh /restaurants/detail/1. And what I'll see are the details for Scott's Pizza. So we did retrieve this. And just to do another check, I do see Cinnamon Club. And everything here appears to be working. But what happens if we have a curious user who sees this number at the end of every URL and says, well, what happens if I look for something with a 10? What's happening here is our data layer is returning a null restaurant. It didn't find the restaurant in the data source. And we're passing that null reference into our Razor page, which is writing these expressions which dereference that pointer and throw an exception. What can we do about this situation? Let's look at that next.